Mike Bordenaro here, Executive Director of the Asset Leadership Network, lamenting the days, not lamenting the days, lamenting that we don't have our Director of Technology, Nicholas Kanoki, available like he used to be, because as much as I advocate for advanced use of technology, I am not the technology guy. Um, you might have seen it for just a second. The slide that had the picture of Brian Haines. He is a vice president of strategy for Kahua's Asset Centric, and he is our guest. But we like to thank our patron members, Mantech Onuma, ABS Quality Evaluations, and our other members, which include Kahua. And that slide's not coming up, and neither is the slide talking about next week's ALN Thursday at 3 with Sterling Thomas, Dr. Sterling Thomas, who is the chief scientist for the Government Accountability Office. He's going to be speaking with us, and he'll be presenting at the Global Asset Management Summit. And then the following week after that is Christina Benti, who will be the MC of the summit. And I'm so happy to have them give previews, as I am happy to have a preview from Brian Haines. Brian, you can join us now. Brian and I were on a panel yesterday with ALN board member Jack Dempsey, and it was facilitated by our good friend Nicholas Johnson. And boy, what a great person! And so happy that Kahua is a member. Your leadership and all your team members are so on board with the beneficial transformation of the building industry. And while in the pre meeting session, Brian and I were talking about how we've known this has been necessary for a long time, but Kahua is bringing the weapons to actually transform the industry. And you have the attention of powerful owners who are following your direction. And the Asset Leadership Network is so happy that you'll be speaking at the Global Asset Management Summit Repeatable Success Stories, and that you have those repeatable success stories to share. And that Brian specifically is going to be talking in the AI and federal asset management section at the Rayburn House office building on the 29th. But before we get into all that good stuff, and we're excited to talk about the event yesterday and what Brian's going to be talking about, let's get a little background on you, Brian. You've got quite a history. Where do we start with all the associations you volunteer for, or the extensive technical work you've done in the building industry?
Yeah, well, thanks, Mike, for welcoming me today. It's such a fast world that we live in that I was sitting on a stage with you yesterday in DC, and now I'm sitting in my office at home in North Carolina. And it's just unbelievable how much we move these days and talk. So, it's interesting because usually when I talk about my career, I talk about what I currently do and then kind of go backwards. I started yesterday. I thought it was kind of interesting because especially for the audience that we were talking to think back on how I got to where I am. And I was telling the story that my very first job was as a technician, as a maintenance technician on a nuclear submarine. For 8 years I was in the Navy. And talk about the most physically intense, asset intensive environment that you can imagine, living inside of a 360-foot steel tube that houses a nuclear reactor and a lot of other things, as well as keeping 120 people alive in conditions that aren't livable, which was really pretty amazing way to start my life. And it also kind of affected the way I thought about the mission criticality of the things around me. Right? You couldn't stand for failure. You just simply had to keep things up and running. You had to be very agile. You had to do things sort of off the cuff. And anyway, that was an interesting introduction to my career. I always wanted to be in the building industry. It just was something that fascinated me from a young age. So I ended up leaving the military and going to the University of Arizona. I got a bachelor's of architecture studying sustainable building design. But it was always connected to technology. I was not a
Go
normal,
Bears. Go Bears. I learned that yesterday.
it's bear down, but close enough.
Oh, sorry. Bear
There's a whole
down.
story. It's actually the Wildcats, but we'll let that go. But no, I
Okay.
appreciate that. So, but interestingly, I always loved technology. Right, I was one of those guys, one of those early guys, early people who was tearing apart and building computers like around 1980 that when no one else was doing it because I thought it was fascinating. And so I carried that sort of approach towards facility operations. I realized that working for state government was not where I wanted to be. I wanted to be in industry building that technology. So I ended up going to a startup. And from that startup, I got recruited by Autodesk. I spent a number of years at Autodesk working on some
Starting
very
when?
2005 to 2012. So about 8 years I was there. It was a really fantastic time, explosive growth for Autodesk as a company because they had acquired Revit a couple of years before I started. That was really driving this whole BIM story around facilities, and really interesting things were happening. But I loved operations, so I left there. I went to FM Systems for 14 years. FM Systems got acquired by Johnson Controls in 2023, and that's where I was up until I joined Kahua earlier this year to really come over as the VP of strategy and help Kahua build an asset business around what we're calling asset centric project management, which I think is an entirely new way to think about how we collect information on assets during any kind of project and carrying that into operations. So
Yeah.
that's kind of a quick overview of my career.
Yeah, that's great. I think uh, if we got rid of the word project and just called it asset management, then that would get people the idea of it doesn't end.
I'm with
Built
you.
into project management is the project's end, and people go like this, and you know,
Yeah, it's interesting coming into this world because Kahua is a traditional PMIS, right? So they're firmly entrenched in very large construction, and with some of the biggest owners in the world doing massive capital programs. But about 2 years ago, Brian Moore, our president, really kind of started this idea that there was a missing gap. We've known about the missing gap. I've been talking about the missing gap since my Autodesk days, right? The bridge, and everybody always talks about the bridge between construction and operations and how those people don't talk and no one shares information and we get a pile of PDFs at the end of a project if you're lucky and all of those things that we all know. Well, Brian started building the solution that was really quite interesting to me. I mean, he and I started talking last summer, and I was fascinated by this approach. And that was if someone touches a piece of information about an asset, give them the ability to enter that data into a solution. It doesn't matter who they are, it could be any project participant, it could be the least technical person all the way up to a senior leader. If they've got information and they want to attach it to a piece of equipment or an asset record, do it. And they've done this with a really fantastic technology. And you were asking me about industry associations. One of them, well, I've been in IFMA my whole career, so International Facility Managers Association. But I joined National Institute of Building Science a number of years ago, probably around my Autodesk days. And by 2015, I was the co-chair of the COBE standard for National Institute of Building Science and shepherded through COBE version 2.4 and then 3.0 in 2023. Also helped with MBIM's version 4, the National BIM standard, really helping shape those standards. And I was saying this yesterday, Mike, I think standards are phenomenal. And I always wondered why we've got these beautiful standards, why people were defaulting to doing things like filling out spreadsheets or not doing anything at all, not using the standards. And it's because there were a lot of other enabling things that had to happen, in my opinion, to make those standards be realized. And so I've spent a lot of time in my career hoping and wishing for seamless asset handover, because I can go all the way back to my early days in architecture and tell you it was bad then, and it's still not great now, which is really disappointing. But I will
Mhm.
not rest until I fix that problem.
So what are some of the things? Because to me, it's the tools work, you know, we can prove that over and over. The
Sure.
processes work, we got the standard operating business process, the ISO management standards, ASTM, all of the standards.
Yeah.
It's the
I
human
love this.
behavior.
I love ISO. I love 55,000. I love 19650 for BIM
Yeah.
and life cycle. I love all of those things because I'm an advocate for. And you're right, there are tools. All of us have been using Excel for decades, and Excel's a tool. It's not a good tool, but it's a tool. And I don't know if you've ever had to enter 30,000 asset records into an Excel spreadsheet one at a time by yourself,
Mhm.
by having a PDF next to you of a submittal and then a spreadsheet and cutting and pasting. Maybe if it was a vector PDF, it was a raster PDF, you couldn't do that, so you had to type and then you made mistake. You know what I mean? So technology has always been there. For a long time, people were trying to stuff it all into a BIM model. And that was a bad idea because then the models ended up terabytes in size and people wanted to use them. And if you weren't a BIM person, I mean, there's been a lot of technology solutions. I'm a bite sized technology solution person. And what I mean by that is if I have access and I'm the person who's closest to the data, maybe I'm standing in front of a piece of equipment, maybe I'm the maintenance technician, maybe I'm managing the asset or I'm a facility manager, and if I'm standing right there, I don't want to open a model. I don't want to open a spreadsheet. Maybe I just need to enter a serial number or something that I've gotten from that piece of equipment. Shouldn't I just be able to do it easily as we do everything on our phones? It was interesting. I'm going to tell you a story because it's kind of funny. So I'm on this kick where I'm losing weight, right? So I'm really focused on what I'm eating, and I'm standing at the Kahua event yesterday, and I'm looking at all of these snacks. And I said to the guy next to me, I said, tell me which one of these is the healthiest. And he whips out his phone and he's got this little app and he starts scanning the barcodes and he goes, that's the best one. I was like, what? Are you kidding me? And it was so easy.
Okay.
He should, I downloaded it. It's on my phone now. And so I started using it today. It was so easy.
All
That's
right.
what I mean.
So this is about you, but you work for Kahua, so it's all right if I say some cool things about Kahua. So
Yes,
yesterday's
please
event
do.
was just over the top wonderful. It was
Yeah.
at the Willard Hotel. I felt like getting married. It was such a
Right.
wonderful event. And
Yep.
um, there were just dynamic speakers, and there was an interactive session where an hour was divided into 20-minute uh, uh,
Right.
present tabletop working sessions, and then reports from the highlights from each of the different groups that you could have speed dated with. And off to the side there were a couple of large display computers where you could create an app. And I went up there and said, how do let's create an app to improve the distribution of best practices from Kahua projects. And now that's in the app. Fact, it was like 2 minutes and the app was created.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I'll be talking about this at the Global Asset Management Summit, and that is how I think the time is now. Mike, it's AI and it's computing power that's allowing us to not eliminate the bridge. I think the bridge is the wrong approach to bridging operations and construction. I think it's all the same thing. It's the life cycle of our assets, and those assets could be your entire portfolio. It could be a single facility. It could be a floor. It could be a space. It could be a piece of equipment. And that's the way I think of assets. And maybe the problem was too big for people. You know what I mean? So, like, too big to rely on one person to go share information with another person. AI really flattens the field, and
Yeah.
it's allowing us to be able to kind of erase the bridge and just say they're all the same thing. So I can track really intense information about a piece of equipment. Everything I ever decided when I was selecting that, what performance requirements I had, how big did it need to be to fit the design I have, who's going to use it, how are they going to interact with it, how are we going to get data out of it to measure its performance. And that goes throughout its entire life until frankly, I get rid of it and, transact it out of my portfolio. What you saw yesterday was Kahua doing that with a lot of new AI capabilities. Do you remember the session in the afternoon where Brian was up with our CTO and he was
Yes.
showing the dozen new things? Guess what? When I started in January, none of those things existed. I didn't see them. They weren't developing them. Those have been created so quickly and erasing that bridge that now is the time to seize the
Yeah.
day around asset lifecycle management.
Okay, so you been involved in IFMA. Can you talk about other associations and then come around back to IFMA because I believe you've got a paper in
I
that.
do. I just produced a story on the future of AI and facilities management for IFMA's Corporate Facilities Council magazine, part of the FMJ. So if you're
Okay, so
familiar
let's
with
talk
it,
about that. We'll talk about the other associations later.
sure, sure. Yeah, yeah. So we'll talk about that. So really, my feeling is that we are at the precipice, not only just sort of shifting to this asset lifecycle view, but we're shifting from reactive to intelligent operations of our facilities. In other words, instead of responding to problems, we're now able to predict and essentially cut off at the pass long before problems ever exist. And I think that what we're also seeing is facilities are becoming data platforms. I've done a lot of presentations at IFMA World Workplace, at Campus and Facility Technology Association, at NFMT, you name it. If it's an operations conference, all the trade line conferences, I've been speaking and evangelizing about this for the last several years. I believe that many of our buildings, many of our facilities, many of our assets are already telling us things, but we're probably not listening. They may be speaking, they may be sending out telemetry data, but it's so much. We talk, and if you add into that intelligent building systems like what Johnson Controls has with their Open Blue and Metasys, and all of the other big, let's say, iron manufacturers putting smart systems into our buildings, they're all sending out massive amounts of information. But if you're not listening, you're missing out. Now, here's the key: humans can't listen to that much information. And I don't mean to put humans down. I am one, I've been one my whole life. We're not really good at synthesizing massive amounts of information. And I'm not talking about a 30,000 row spreadsheet. I'm talking about a piece of equipment that may be communicating 30,000 times per minute. That's the amount of data that I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So I do believe that our facilities are going to become data platforms, and this sort of seamless view to operations is going to start at the building level and go all the way down to everything that's happening, including occupant interaction, the way people interact with space. It's not a mystery that we can sense when people are there, and I think in now and into the near future, our facilities and the assets around us will configure themselves based upon who we are. They'll do things. They'll welcome you to the space. We're already seeing, furniture manufacturers automatically adjust the seating based upon your personal preferences before you sit down because it's coming. It's things like Bluetooth that are communicating that. And that's all focused on producing a better workplace experience. And workplace experience is not just about feeling good. It's about health and all of that, but it's also on the flip side, it's also about better productivity for all of us in our workplace. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the way I think about the future of all of this. And that's what the article's on. You should check it out. We can send a link out or whatever. It's FM
It's
Magazine.
IFMA.org, probably.
Yep, it's and you can look up FM Magazine April 2026. I'll send out a link, or you can look at it on my LinkedIn profile. But yeah, we'll send out a link.
Okay. And is there anything else from the article in terms of revealing tools or processes that you talk about?
Yeah, it's interesting. So one of the things that we talk about are some of the challenges and considerations, right? So we talk about something that we've been talking about for a long time, and that is data integration, being able to look at inbound and outbound information, getting telemetry data from equipment. If you don't understand the use cases that you're trying to solve, then you're probably going to be really disappointed in whatever you select to help you solve that problem. So when it talks a little bit about system selection. So if you're going to be picking technologies, understand what you're trying to accomplish before you go out and shop. And we're also talking about the strategic future of facilities management, the way it's going to be much more agile. And I think facilities will be really centered to the transformation of facilities management because our buildings are going to act much more like our partners than our problems. You know, it's we think back to the to movies from the past and you see Captain Kirk talking to the Starship Enterprise. That's
Hmm.
real, man. That's now. You can talk to your building and ask it questions using natural language interfaces and AI, and it's going to tell you how it's feeling. It's going to tell you what's wrong with it. And those kinds of facilities already exist, and that's going to be the future of the way I think we're looking at assets.
I came up with a theorem earlier this century. Everything in Star Trek eventually becomes true. And you're just proving that theorem. And so I want to get to the point where why did humanity begin exploring space?
Right.
And it was because we decided that war was silly. And instead of spending time on war, humanity decided to work together to explore space. So that's the part of the science fiction that I want to see happen. And to
Yeah.
tell you the truth, I think asset management is a simple way to explain why we should be working together instead of against each other because we can prove on an etch a sketch that blowing up buildings is not good asset management. And if you want to have a people do something for you instead of against you, it might be better to befriend them
Yeah.
instead of
I don't
blowing things
disagree
up.
with you on any of those points, although I've seen a few buildings blown up because they were being just torn down because a new facility was going to go there. Maybe that's a different approach to the blowing up that
Yeah,
you're
well,
talking about.
that's all right. So that could be good asset management. And I've actually taken a date to a demolition, and it is a really cool date to watch something blow up with somebody. So
Yeah, yeah, it's incredible. It's incredible. Yeah, so it's an exciting time. It's a good time. It's a good
so
time, and I like to think of my building as my friend.
that's a good way of doing it. I've
Yeah,
actually said that to so many of us are aging out. Well, I've got friends in Chicago where I live who spent 40 years with the building, renting and living there and stuff. And it's beyond her ability to maintain anymore. And I say, well, that's because and she's having a hard time selling it and moving on. And I say, well,
yeah.
think of your building as a friend. Yeah, that's right, I do. Well, your friend wants you to move to Florida.
That's another issue that we're grappling with in our industry. It's something that IFMA is really focused on, Mike, and that is the aging out of a lot of really experienced people who are taking that information with them. That's another area where I see life cycle management of assets and AI helping out. If you can literally catalog and essentially write the book of the life of an asset or thousands of assets or millions of assets as they go through their life cycle. And everything's being recorded, decisions that you made, why you did things. Then that information is available for posterity, and people who are future operators, future maintainers, can reach back and find out, almost like reaching into you or doing a seance with you, right? Since you're long gone, why were these decisions made? Why were RFIs and change orders and all of these things made when we were upgrading, renovating, retrofitting, building, tearing down? Why? And you're going to
Hmm.
find out. And it's also going to be a lot broader than that. You're going to be able to ask a lot of why questions or how questions. Why are my facilities in one part of my portfolio operating more efficiently than another? And it could be a lot of things. It could be climate. It could be the age and condition of the facilities. It could have been vendors that you selected. It could have been manufacturers that you selected. And all of them, you're actually going to be able to just ask. Tell me where I'm doing well. Tell me where I'm not doing well. As a matter of fact, it's probably going to tell you where you're doing well before you even ask it. Eventually, it's just going to simply be a conversation. So it's exciting.
So John is saying some things, and I'm responding to. He says people are assets,
People are assets.
and
Entirely
uh,
agree.
yeah, it's their skills because one of the keynote speakers yesterday reminded us that so much computing power, the lithium batteries, are built by slaves in China. That
Yeah,
entire race of people is enslaved.
yeah,
And there was some cold, hard reality exposed to the building industry and what we're doing. And that was really good that Kahua is bringing that type of message to us also. I'm so impressed with the setting, the operation of the event, the content of the event, and the meaning and drive and tension of it. So
yeah.
that was really impressive. Um, and so then I want to take a second to talk about where we are having our event at the end of the month. It's not at the fancy hotel. It's not at a convention center. It's at the DC government's Office of the Chief Financial Officer conference room. And it is to help government executives share their best practices. And we're trying to launch a global initiative of asset management best practice sharing. Not that IFMA, the International Facility Management Association, isn't already sharing best practices around the world, but with DC government as our capital, with 14 sister cities that are capital cities at 14 nations, we have something built in place to have this go from professional to professional in a faster manner because we're facing a world of problems together as a single human race. And the better we are able to share the solutions, the better off we're going to be helping everybody on the single planet, which Nicholas pointed out. We saw some great images from beyond the moon that shows, hey, people, it's just one building. It's called the world, and we happen to all share it. So um, that was a good reminder. And then the other day of the event is at the House of Representatives Rayburn office building, where it's again, it's not a fancy location or anything, but it's meaningful in that we're bringing this message from the people to our representatives and saying that this is what's important.
Yeah,
So
I look forward to it, Mike. And this is my first year in the Asset Leadership Network, my first year attending the conference. I'm really looking forward to it because, it's something that I'm quite passionate about. I look forward to speaking there and really, really enjoyed speaking with you yesterday. I think we had a real connection and obviously a real mission to work on this together.
yeah, so it's worked out great. Everybody, Brian and I had one call last Friday, and we met yesterday, and we're best buddies already. So that's how this goes in the asset management, asset leadership world. So let's see if I can get the PowerPoint to call up your picture and see what if I'm able to do what I wasn't to start the program. There we go.
Ah, there I
So
am.
yes. Now the idea is to make it go full screen. There it was. I was clicking too many times. So thank you very much, Brian. It's been great meeting you, and thank you for joining us and letting others know about yourself and what you'll be saying later this month. And thank you very much to Mantech, Onuma, and ABS Quality Evaluations, and all of our patron members, which include Kohua. And I don't have Sterling Thomas lined up. He's our guest next week, but then Christina Benti will be talking on the 23rd. I'm so happy she's finally able to come to the US and participate in our in person activity. I hope the audience here enjoyed today's talk. I'm sure they did, and that they're in the DC. If you're in the DC area, please, we want to see you in person. Yeah, it was really great to see people in person yesterday. Come join the excitement and join the mission. Thanks again, Brian.
Thank you, Mike. Have a
Bye.
great day, everyone. Bye bye.